Muto,
Hello.
how are you?
Good, it's been a while. How are you?
No, it's been a little while, yeah.
It's good to see you.
Excellent to see you. You look like you're in martial arts uniform, or maybe that's how you look every day.
Yeah, this is carpenters, the
Oh,
Japanese carpenters, the clothes.
oh, carpenter clothes. I thought it was like a grandmaster of carpentry. Hello, Ron.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi,
hello,
everybody.
Graham.
I'm on here.
Do you hear us, Graham? You look frustrated.
I'm tired.
It's okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hear you fine. Do you hear us?
I can hear you.
Well, the other people aren't saying anything, so it's good.
Testing. Do you read me?
Yeah.
I can hear you, Ron.
Good. Okay.
Hey, Graham, it's been a while.
Yeah.
I like your outfit. Is
Thank
that
you. Thank
is that for questing? It's a questing outfit.
It's a carpenter questing. He's
A carpenter questing outfit.
he's a
Okay.
17th degree carpentry master.
17th degree.
Yeah, that's very advanced.
That's very advanced.
Yeah, it's sort of a secret, but it is.
you.
Hi, So you are doing some carpentry, Moto, or what?
No, this is just it's really hot in Japan right now, and very humid. This actually is very cool. Like a lot of
Something loose.
A lot of air, yeah.
Yeah, but I envy the Heiner. You outside.
Heiner's outside. You got great colors today.
Yeah.
In the garden, yes. And I can even prove it.
You can prove it?
Yes.
How are you going to prove it? Well, because we can see it.
No, I was trying to reverse the camera to prove it. Yes, now.
Oh, wow, yeah.
You see?
That's cool. Yeah, you got all sorts of gardens. That's a very nice garden.
So I try to go very soon on my laptop because the smartphone is not really convenient to see all the participants. But I'm fine, and I'm in Berlin.
Okay, well, you look great. You got the best video of all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hello, Hanny Lee.
Hello, Flemming. How are you?
Good.
Hello.
It's been a while.
Yes. No, not a while. On Facebook, I see all your interesting posts, and yeah.
We're not far away.
No.
All right. So there's a million other people who said they might come. I don't know. So there might be some other potentially new faces, but we're not gonna wait for them necessarily. So
we have Ron, so we'll be okay.
we got Ron, so Ron will take care of things. Yeah. A-okay. All right, and there's Gina or Gina Swall.
Can I say something yet?
Yes, you can say something, sure.
I was really amazed at the numbers. You were talking about launching a quest, and if you look at the numbers of this meeting ID, there's lots of 14s in there and 41s. And that means somewhat wild and needs change and adventure.
Okay, so that's a good thing.
So that was interesting.
Okay.
Synchronistically, how that happened.
Okay, I like synchronistic happenings. So very cool. Okay. Hello, Gina.
Hello, Gina.
Hi, Gina.
Okay, well, let's just sort of start. Let's start with doing nothing, just sort of taking a deep breath and finding ourselves in the chairs we're in or the floor we're standing on, whatever we're doing, and take a few deep breaths and become aware of your body and your breathing. Just relax for a moment. And when we're all here, we're going to move on to the conversation of today. And as usual, it's about what we might discover in the middle. It's about seeing what might want to emerge. It's not about all the things we might have ready to say to be interesting. It's more about looking at what's there that's new and so far unknown. And the theme or the question I put today was quite personal for me, but it's also really about the group here. Sort of, I feel the need for moving in a somewhat new direction, and I don't know if it is a continuation of this group or if it's sort of something different. And it doesn't really matter much either way, but we can work a little together to try to see what might make sense. So it's, even though I worded it as it's about me who would like to take off an adventure, it's more about, well, what's next for this group? There are some things I would like to do. Or is it just more of the same? Is it new or different? What is it? I'm not quite sure. So I have a sense that it's a quest of some kind, an adventure. And we've talked about this in several ways recently, and that there's something to do in a create your own adventure kind of network, that to sort of enable that everybody can follow their own path and go on their own hero's journey and do what they're here to do, and that somehow our networking together can assist each other in doing that. And also there's sort of a thread of, well, how can it be more, maybe more immersive or more adventurous? Like these meetings here are, it works really well, but at the same time, we're sort of meeting in the same way. We're these faces, we're looking at each other on video in Zoom, which is a great tool, but it's also sort of the same thing. And I would like to have different forms of it. And in the beginning of the conversational experiments, that was part of the idea of different forms of the meetings. And then we've experimented with many different things, but no matter what we did, we've still been this little matrix of faces looking at each other, which again is nice, but how can we move on from there without losing the potential connection we have from seeing each other live here? And I don't really know. So, but part of some of the thoughts that have come up recently, Ron and I and Joachim and John Kelton and what's his name? I haven't seen you for a while. Doug has mentioned it several times. Like we used to go on these virtual adventures, which are sort of, you create the agreement that we're going on a journey in to some space that has some visual and auditory elements, and we just sort of agree now we're going on a hike or to a spa or to a mountain stream or something like that, and by having a few visual elements that allow us to sort of step into that, it creates an environment that makes it very interesting to go on a quest, and that sets the stage in a different way. I would like to go further with that kind of thing. And anyway, so these are just some loose things for me, but the idea is still that we together look at whatever is ready to emerge for us, or whatever we see from this. So this can come from any direction. And part of what I see, which the technology doesn't quite support yet, is sort of this shared dream space with wherever we want to be, or whatever we think of that we would like to look at, or what we would like to explore, we would like to meet, we would just sort of go there. Virtual reality, augmented reality will be there in a few years where that would be the thing one does instead of just having a phone. We would be able to take a walk at Machu Picchu or whatever it is that we would like to do. That's a little hard to do now, but I see it a little bit like that, like being in a shared dream with whatever sort of comes up as an impulse or a point of attraction. We can just sort of go there together and be present with whatever it is, where it's more of a traveling kind of thing, not so much that like here we need to log in and we live together in this one screen. That's fantastic, but it's also very limiting. So I would like it to be more sort of a traveling band of friends that can more easily meet in different places at different times without worrying much about the technology of that. And then that's sort of a harmonic also of what I see, what my quest is about, is a network where you can just sort of follow your calling and go and do it, and some other people will join you, and you don't waste all the time on discussing, well, how should that happen, or how do we do that, or planning it. I mean, you just sort of go there. So there's sort of several things that fit together, like both what I would like to find on my quest and what some of the elements would be. So I'm just a little uncertain on how to launch that, so it doesn't just become something one sits and talks about.
My first experience like this, which was before the knowledge expeditions, was for a very specific purpose. And that's kind of how I got into doing this kind of stuff that you're talking about. But I don't see a very specific purpose happening here. And that's the part I'm struggling with. Because the world we more or less created to accommodate the kind of thing you're talking about was for very specific stuff. In fact, it was about a specific complicated guitar fingering pattern, but that just exploded into a whole world with two people at that time. So, and we did not have a lot of VR at our disposal. This was in 2007, and so we did it mostly in our heads, but we also used peripheral materials and in fact tried to imprint it in every sensory way we could and kind of built a story around it. But we had this underlying specific thing we were working on, and I don't think we have that here. Or well, maybe it's specific on another level, but you know what I'm saying. So that's what I'm struggling with. If it wasn't for that, if there was some very specific thing we were trying to do here, I would almost think it would be easy to do what you're talking about. But it's not. It's loosely connected, and but it is connected, and so that's all I can offer for these first couple of minutes here. It's inconclusive, but it seems like we could do it, except I'm struggling with this problem about the specificity of it.
So sort of like what is it? Like if there was this very specific aim or purpose or project.
You're right.
Okay.
And I don't think that's what you're talking about, and I don't really particularly want it to be that way, although if it's something I was interested in, maybe, but...
Well, I'm to some degree suggesting a project, but it's a bit loosely defined, but it's sort of a meta project of a network, that a structure that makes it more possible for people to do their thing, whatever it is. But that's hard to talk about in sensible ways.
Yeah, so we have to make that seem real and in fact sensible, like you said.
Yeah, because a lot of people will sort of jump to, okay, well, but what do you want to do? And And part of what I'm saying is I want all of us to do what we want to do.
Right.
And if you then say, well, what is that? Well, I don't know. It's a structure that helps us get clear on what that is. We're not all equally clear on what we want to do. I would like meetings like this and other structures and other activities to be very, very helpful in that. So by showing up and playing together, we become more clear on what's our thing. What are we doing? And if we need people to play with, we find them easily, and we can go and do that and spend a minimal of effort on arguing about, well, what is it? Or no, I don't want to do that.
Thanks to this structure, we can do that.
Yeah, so that's sort of my quest, or the project I'm suggesting, that to find out what that is. And since I don't know exactly what it is, I have a lot of intuitions in those areas, but I don't know if is it a computer program? Is it a certain protocol, a way of meeting, a certain game, a mystery, a quest? I mean, it might in itself be any of those things, that it's just the act of looking for it, which is sort of the idea of a quest, that you're looking for the Holy Grail. The point is not really that you need that Holy Grail. Like the journey becomes the thing, and that takes you to interesting places where you get the answers to lots of things, and things get worked out along the way. So I'm interested in something like that, and I'm very I'm sort of against trying to define it all in advance, like an old-fashioned way of doing many things, that we decide, well, what is it? Okay, we make a plan, and then we raise some funds and we hire some people to do it, or we just like make the plan of what do we need to do, and then we do it. And some people would proceed like that. They would in advance try to get the answer, and then they would spend a couple of years implementing it in some, like if it was a computer program, that would be sort of a couple of years to sort of do whatever it is one imagined. And after a couple of years, you find out that, well, it wasn't really it. So I'd rather not do that. I'd rather have everything count, have the whole journey count, not try to solve it in advance. Yeah. I expect the answers to show up along the way, but I don't know what they are. I have a sense of what kind of things might be needed, but that's sort of part of the quest.
I can't help but picture a world, which is almost always what comes up in my experience along these lines. At some point, I have to picture a world I'm going to live in, because that's the only way you can live in something. There's got to be a world to live in. But if we agreed on some specific world or game-like surrounding, or maybe something suggested like the image that you posted for this meeting, for example, we know we're not going to limit ourselves to that, and we could have a whole array of worlds at our disposal. So I still don't know how to manage that, but in any case, I can't help but imagine that it involves a world or worlds, rather than just an abstract, there's a connective diagram for a network or something like that, which is also great. I enjoy that kind of the map making part, but if it has to be a world that could be lived in the way I see it.
Okay, so you're imagining the thing to find would be some kind of world to live in, or that it's required to sort of get there, that it's sort of it's tangible, that it's real in some sense, like it's real places. It's not just a theoretical discussion.
So, can I?
Yes.
Okay. I have the thought. Okay. Many things come up, and I'll just share the individual elements that came up. I dearly remember Second Life and all of that. I have friends who play something called EVE Online, which is one of the largest games in the world, and there's extraordinary amount of questing, support, development. People learn, they develop very well. Of course, you need a budget of millions to be able to create that kind of immersive environment, and it's a very structured environment. It's space, it's all sorts of, but the storylines that have come out of that have been extraordinary. The other thing was that years ago, a friend of mine in the States, he's now dead, he started a Facebook page where he basically posted characters and locations and venues and different scripts and storylines, and people just picked them up and went with them and commented on them and developed them and shared their images and so on. And part of that was that you could present yourself as a certain character, and you'd have like a trump card of, you know, I am, you know, Will Questor, as I put here, these are my skills, these are my abilities, and these are my particular quests that I'm interested in. You know, I have to find some very, very rare tusk from a white tiger, and then anyone can help me with that. And people just jump in with their imagination and say, oh, you should go here. The other thing is that there's no reason why websites that are free to put up or pages can't be put up with clues, information. There's no reason why QR codes can't be placed in the real world or the physical world, where you click on them and you suddenly get access to a very different, oh, this is now accessing this Facebook group, and there's people from all over the world basically mashing up some sort of storyline which doesn't really make sense, but doesn't matter because something emerges. And I'm just aware this is a very early, messy stage, and that when we're speaking in language that is language that's about structure and protocol, it's hard to put images to that. So I imagine that we're all meeting in some far off region. We've all got here after fighting through the forest and all our particular travails, and we've found each other, a bit tired, a bit exhausted, a bit fed up with all the shite that we have to deal with. And we say, right, where are we going to go? And it might take a couple of days or weeks to discover, actually, we want to do this. And the final thing before I shut up is that I think what Flemming said at the beginning is that all the tools, the AR, the VR, will be available probably in 2 or 3 years, and this will be normal. So if this group is part of the preparation phase and we actually build worlds and tools, when they become available, we just plug in. And there'll be people out there who say, we need content, we need media, and these guys have it because they've created all this wonderful content. So I think part of that, and probably been doing that with John Keld and all these other guys, Flemming, is a preparation phase for when the tech is actually ready.
I totally agree. Thanks, Graham. Peter, you would like to say something?
Yes, Will, listening to Will, thank you. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late. I missed your opening, Flemming, but with what Will said, it reminded me of my quest, which is that of Creativity Cafe, a venue where you can go to be served with a solution that is what you're seeking, because of all of the creative minds that would congregate in this physical and not so physical, as you indicate, venue in any given community, where people who are inspired, who are gifted, who are techno-theologians, who are spiritualized, they're there. We are all here to be of service to our brethren. So what about having a venue where physically those who can't afford or have no knowledge of the web or VR or AR or any of that stuff can have a place to go, to be, to make contact with others who are inspired and creative, who want to improve things on the planet? That's kind of my quest, is to find a venue or people interested in grounding the idea of a networking venue for creative people specifically, because they're different. We are different than the run-of-the-mill normal go about your workaday world folks. And where do we go to find others like us outside of an isolated gallery opening or an educational institution where we've taken art classes or music classes or what have you, where you can find other creative, inspired visionaries, people who want to make a difference and really get together to solve the problems of our communities and therefore the cities and the countries which have challenges. So that's my quest. Anybody resonate?
Yeah. I resonate, and I resonate with all of the above. Like it's not an either or side, but I resonate with it, with trying to make all these things fit together. Where it might be a physical place, it might be a fictional place, it might be a particular project or need. It might be all of these things weaving together. So maybe part of what the quest is for is like, what can we have, or what can we be present with or feel or sense together that will work no matter which of those it is. Like Will Graham mentioned, like some of this stuff will be technologically available in a couple of years. Like, how can you prepare? I mean, you could prepare by making content, but you can also prepare by the state of mind, which maybe nobody's thinking about. People are working on building like 3D content and trying to map the world and connect it together. But I'm not sure if anybody's working on, well, how do we need to be in order to live successfully in a world where we're all connected and we can travel in fictional, very realistic worlds, or meet in person, and it doesn't really matter, whether it all becomes more fluid. Like how do we need to be? It's hard enough to figure out how to be in a video meeting here where we're looking at each other, but if suddenly we all have different bodies and we're flying in the air on the moon or something, then what are the rules suddenly?
Well, why would we want to be there? That's the point. Why would anybody want to be in this virtual space when really the point of it is to make physical connection with people? I think that's the basis of what we all desire.
Well, yeah, but in part because we often aren't in the same place. Like us here, we're in Japan, we're in France, we're in Germany, we're in different places. So, but we would still like to meet together. It would be lovely to meet in person, but that would take a little while to organize, and we would not all make it, and so forth.
Yeah, so, I think it has to have a sense of being physical. And then the first experience I had of like along these lines that I mentioned was in physical presence with someone. But it also continued when we were out of presence. The story continued, and then I had these experiences with you and with John and Joachim and many people, and it became almost as real, or in some ways more real. People often mention it's kind of maybe a little bit of a paradox, but I think it does have to seem to be physical, and in many cases it's literally physical. But then what about this meeting? Can't this be just as real?
I would like it to be. So, I mean, I kind of want the same thing, but in a wider way. I want to physically meet and touch you and feel and sense all the little details that we sense when we're there in person. This is great, but this is not quite good enough. I mean, if we're there in person, I can hug you. I can pick up sort of little signals. I can look at what's going on in our environment, and all of that is part of our meeting. And I see that happening technologically, that yes, you can do it in an actual physical place, but pretty soon you'll be able to meet on the moon and it will be just as real. And that will be weird because we're not sort of used to that. I mean, we don't know how to be necessarily. So I like that physical connection, but I would be happy to have it anywhere in dream space. And so it sort of it converges in a similar fashion. And so part of that for me is maybe finding a way of finding what is it that connects it together? How can we be if the place might be totally different, or the people might be totally different, or the meeting place or the subject. So, and that has been part of a threat for me with the conversational experiments. Like things have changed. I have deliberately changed the experiment and tried different things. And part of what we've discovered is that we can find each other well, no matter what, if the rules change. But this is still a fairly limited experiment with looking at each other on a screen. So can we keep that vibe with us of really being present in a group for what's trying to emerge? Can we do that when it's challenged? Can we do that in the rest of our lives, in other settings? So that's part of what I'm reaching for and hoping for, that we're so good at it that no matter what kind of reality you're in, we can still sort of find ourselves and each other in a useful way. Yeah. And then Jaswinder, I saw you pop in. Are you still there? And hello. Maybe not.
Gone.
So anyway, I sort of I like the sort of all and above, a physical space, virtual spaces, various ways of meeting. The problem with the way we do many of them right now is it's sort of the moment it's like the meeting is done, like if we come together for a conference or something for a couple of days, it's great, and we see each other and it's wonderful, and then we sort of go back home, and yes, something will continue, but it's often hard to keep the continuity as much as we would like to. And I would like to sort of get over that, so we can, if we want to stay connected, where we can be connected more of the time, more easily. It's not just sort of isolated events or discussions and then it's over.
Hey, Flemming?
Yeah.
I've got this frequent flyer miles that expires at the end of the year, and we talked about doing some traveling together. Does anybody here want to be a pod of people doing a little bit of exploration, and we can get together physically and see if there's any other groups anywhere that are meeting cybernetically and might like the ground out?
We could pick a place and a time and see if it has traction. Because it doesn't even, there doesn't have to be much reason for it, but just sort of by putting it on the map somewhere would tend to make things happen. Like I know some people in Europe who do their birthday party that way. They just say, well, I mean, their friends are all over the world, but they just say, we're going to have a birthday party Sunday afternoon. So and they invite their friends all over the place, and they actually fly in from far away just to sort of go to a party and leave again. And so it doesn't have to be a big conference with a topic or something. It could just be deciding on some meeting points and then see what happens, and maybe see who else is there locally and go with it.
Has anybody been to Damenher?
No. That would be a nice place.
I'd like to hear from, I think Gina was trying to say something earlier. I'd like to hear from Hannah. How are you, love?
I'm great, thank you.
And Motor Hero. I just want any images. I think certainly I work with images.
Okay, can you hear me? I was worried before that you couldn't hear me, but you can hear me. Okay, good. So what I'm enchanted by, Flemming, is this idea of the quest. And having played in Second Life, much like Will has, it was fun, but I actually felt because I like flying, you know, but I felt in some way it was a bit of a distractor from what we were trying to achieve. So we were using Second Life at IBM to improve management skills. How dull. But what I'm thinking more along is the idea of the quest and the venture. And even if we haven't got the virtual reality to explore that, maybe we should just talk about, do we have a quest? Can we feel our quest? What is our quest? And tell our story. And it's much like Will suggested, that we come together in our pub. We've come many different directions. Like, so my quest and my physical experience doesn't need to necessarily be with this group, because I have physical experiences in my own community where I'm trying to build on my quest and develop my quest. And so for me, that's at the moment enough. But I'm finding my quest very interesting, because I feel like I'm getting all these little bits and pieces. And in my Gemini nature, I could be very scattered because I find everything exciting. But I have a feeling there's a path, and maybe just talking about what do you feel like is your quest, and then we can work on the format later. So those are my thoughts.
So just the reaction on that, I would love that. So I mean, it's not about one quest, but a meeting place for quests, like sharing how we're progressing on our quest, and then maybe sharing some treasure and some wisdom with each other. would be great. So I'm just wondering what's needed to do that. Like, one thing I've learned from the conversational experiments is, like, I mean, we can set any kind of rules, but just because we set a theme, it doesn't necessarily mean that it happens. So, I mean, just by decreeing that now everybody has a quest, that doesn't necessarily happen. So I'm looking for sort of what gets that game set up where it really feels like this is the place to talk about my quest, and I need to have one if I don't have one. And
or observing somebody else's quest.
So maybe just by somebody sharing sufficiently well what their quest is, it might inspire others. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I think it is important to have whatever we're doing reflect everybody, and whether it's in terms of your quest or maybe some other sense, I do think that is important. And in my experiences with that's part of how you build the story or the world that you're enacting, is by having the real input of real people, whether it's in terms of a quest, which is a pretty good way, or other ways.
Okay, so what I think makes sense, I mean, just having a space to meet regularly where the point is a quest, like we share how we're doing on our quest. So not just as a one-time thing. I mean, I know if I just make the quest the topic today, we're going to talk about it, but we're not going to sort of stick very deeply into it. It needs to sort of simmer a little bit, and we need to come back to it. So maybe having a regular quest sharing thing that will keep that developing, I think.
I'm suggesting that it also might contribute to the actual structure we're creating, and it's well, I'm going to go back to that original experiment, which is very specific, and it was, as I said, it was about learning a complicated guitar fingering pattern, and that's all there. That was the main thing, that pattern. And but then we built up on it, and everything was, and we put all our personal interests and feelings, and perhaps maybe in terms of quests, just what our individual stories into it, and we built the world and the story out of ourselves, our personal. It has to be personal. Maybe that's all I'm saying.
And perhaps in terms of quest, not everybody has to be on their own quest. Somebody might want to join somebody else's.
Yeah.
So very few quest people went by themselves.
Yeah.
I think it's one. Sorry, Heiner, on you go.
I'm having problems with what is a quest. Is this the imagination and the story of a quest where I've been in the past, or where I'm now, or where I'm going in the future? Like Aloha is thinking about Damahur. So if we would create not only our reality where we are now, and even in a Google map or a Google world, but also in a thematic landscape, in which culture, in which epoch, then we could play around in this reality and a reality I would like to be, like our friend here in Damahur. And then we could see, oh, this person is about culture and American Indians, about Chinese or whatever, or he is more into the micro, like a MERP, or in the nano, and the other is more in the macro and astronomic. So then we could have a broader shared reality. And for me, it was always this mental locomotion to imagine being here and being somewhere else at the same time. And this merging and morphing and augmenting, that is my challenge. And I remember, Flemming, when we both first discussed the first Google Maps, and now we have Google Earth, how it was possible that you pan and zoom and fly and merge and morph. So this is actually something like this augmenting, not going into a fantasy game, but combining broader realms or broader cross-scales, cross-sector, cross-time frames of references. This might sound very strange, but I'm living in such worlds for more than 20 years.
Well, I think that's kind of what it is. I mean, it would be a space where our different quests sort of interweave and where we speak the language of quests. And at the same time, that lends itself to sort of decorating our meeting place with the stuff of quests. Like there are certain pictures that go with quests. So we could meet in sort of fictional places while exploring our very real quests, and all of it sort of interweaves. So it's the way I see it. I want to say hello to Jaswinder. How are you? Can you say something? You're muted right now. You don't have to. You can also just look at us in astonishment. That's perfectly fine.
I mean, here's sorry.
Yeah, you can talk.
So here's an idea. Imagine that we crowdfunded a pair of Google Glasses for Flemming. And Flemming basically goes out into the world and he's standing in a certain place this time next week. We're then online watching through his eyes and we say, we challenge you to do this. And Flemming goes off on his quest and we're observing. And then there's some sort of basic quest and we say, oh, you've got to go, that person over there. Can you go and ask that person over there how to get to wherever in Toulouse? And then you find out, and then we're supporting you in a quest. And then if we did somehow get one pair of Google Glasses and we send them around the world to each other, and then the next person uses them, that kind of thing. Because I've had conversations about this where, because of, I mean, I live my life like an adventure game, as you've said, Flemming. So basically, if I'm going out into the world talking to random strangers, which I do, then people can see the world through my eyes and say, can you go and talk? That's my sister's cousin. Go and talk to her and say, I'm sorry, I haven't written you a postcard in years. Or then I end up wherever and you go to an airport and someone says, okay, go to Munich and go and visit that, or go and visit Heiner, or go and visit whomever, and we're supporting the quest. And other people can do that. And I think that's maybe one step, is just in needing technology to do that. Another I see is just having, as Peter was saying, a physical space where we send things to, even if we send postcards to Flemming's house. And then week by week, the storyline evolves. And I also acknowledge what Heiner's saying is this imaginary? And what Ron was saying, does this actually reflect our own personal life stories and how those two, the fantasy and the reality, combine?
So yeah, I would like it to be all of that, so that we can pursue our very real quests, but at the same time doing it in a playful manner that interweaves artifacts and elements of each other's quests and some of those gamified fictional kinds of things. So if any one of those is not quite enough for me. Like, it's not quite enough to have like one physical space or to make a game out of it, or that we just meet, or just that I do what I want to do. I'd like all of it to tie together, and I can see that they all can support each other in an atmosphere of quest. So like and sometimes one or the other will help move forward. Like if we're a little bit stuck in our own actual sort of serious quest in life, then a little bit like what Will suggests there, that like a little treasure hunt in your city or something, or an alternate reality game might move it forward and might incidentally, randomly, synchronistically provide some of the pieces you need. So, which is part of what works in games, that there's some randomity of some things will show up that you see, I didn't think of that, but I could do something with that. So I think all of these tie together, like it provides input and inspiration and motivation for ultimately our real quests. I mean, not are any of them more real or important than the others? I don't know. So I kind of like that it's a little bit blurred. Like, is it a game? Is it like, is it my life? Is it, what is it? It all sort of weaves together in a beautiful way, potentially.
You see what I meant.
Will, when you, I'm sorry, but when you mentioned the, how you, in the beginning, how you got here and sort of found your way through the wilderness, and presumably how we all got here, that's how you imagined it. For whatever reason, that was just the most exciting part of the meeting for me today. So I'm not saying that we have to have that story be our basis, but that's when my heart leapt. And that's what, that has to happen somehow. I also see it as sort of, it's not only that, I also, for example, it reminded me of the way that cells seek each other out in the environment of growth, like neurons. That same story reminds me of that. It just really got me excited.
And Heiner, you were trying to say something too.
Yes, well, my problem is that I don't have words. The painter Franz Marx said, what is an image? It's arriving at another place. And so are our models, our visions, our mental models. And what I was trying to explain before is how to bring realities together, or to make a reality expansion. I called it a cognitive panorama, that I cannot show you what I see with my physical eyes, but where I am thematically or culturally, in what environment, on what scale, in which time or culture or sector, and then we can see how our comments match and overlap. And this gives us more connectedness and even better understanding. In German we say, ohne Zusammenhang kein Zusammenhalt. Without sharing broader comments, we will not hold together, we will not stick together, we will even fight.
Can I share?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. It's very interesting. I'm very visual, so I get visions. And Flemming, when you started, what came was a octopussy. And what I've now perceived, since everybody's sharing so beautifully all these exciting parts, is, and that when you were speaking about the purpose, Ron, earlier, it was like the head of the octopussy with the eyes, and the way we, like Will shared and you and everybody was sharing, is see for each other's eyes, yes, in the process, but the head is holding all these tentacles together. So it's what you just said as well, Hanneke, that it brings it all to, that we experience each other's experiences in whatever way, like Graham has shared, anybody else was sharing, or whatever way, like you say, there's many ways to do it, but it was that coming together thing. I saw the head very clearly with these eyes. So it's very interesting that I saw that before you started sharing. And for me, it brings it also together. And if you look at an octopussy, they can be quite interesting because they can, the ink that they spread, they can hide themselves. So it creates curiosity. When you talk about games, for example, it creates that curiosity. Something new comes to you, you can hide, but it also reveals so much. So that was what I saw and what I've been experiencing now since you all have shared. So thank you for that.
Okay, now I like that image. So now, so what seems to emerge, that it makes sense to have an ongoing questing space meeting kind of thing. So, but I go back to one of my original questions. Well, is that the next experiment in the conversational experiment? Does it make sense to sort of continue like that for a while, like we talk about quests every time, or is it a new thing? I'd like some feedback from you guys. Like, like if I just made it every Wednesday about questing, would that make sense, or would that somehow be disruptive? I'm not quite sure. I mean, otherwise conversational experiments were sort of meant to be the experiment changes every time. So this would have more continuity, but I'd also like it to be more sort of more wild, so to speak, or more sort of morphing by itself every time, maybe being in different places in some fashion. So I'm not quite sure. Like I personally have a problem sort of ending things sometimes. So like I'm good at starting things, but I'm not quite good at saying, okay, now it's enough of this, so now let's do this instead. I would tend to sort of hang on to things forever in some sense. So I'm not sure if I should say now let's let conversational experiments morph into something like this, or just leave it as it is and say, well, okay, now there's just sort of a questing thing happening. I'm not quite sure.
I personally am interested in questing being a theme, perhaps for several weeks, and then we look at it from different angles or experiment with thinking about it and discussing it in different ways. So a bit like if Ron has energy and he's that, there's warmth there. For me, there's warmth around and even if we did like we did with our eyes shut and imagining, okay, here we are in a tavern, we've met, we've been here, we've been there, we shared our individual stories about the last trip we've had, and then see like, what happens next. That's one way, a different way to look at the same thing, a different direction. And then the following week, we invest time in trying something else. So like maybe come out with very strong images, because I know Helene's a painter. I agree with what Heiner's saying about the image. And then we maybe bring images, and then this is what representative of my quest. I also like question is what's the quest I on? What's the quest that I'm on? And it's the questions that we're carrying take us to the next step. So yeah, I personally would like to continue the theme, but looking at it in different ways.
Okay, and thank you for answering that. I mean, that makes sense. It doesn't have to be an either or thing. Now we drop everything and say it's all about quests. I mean, that this happens to be something that's alive right now, and maybe that evolves by itself, and maybe it morphs into something else. Okay.
When I think of quests, I think of being dissatisfied. There is something that I'm missing from my world that I'm seeking. And that's what drives prosperity, as a teacher once suggested that I agree with. That's what drives us all, is we want something other than what we have. And that's our continual quest. We're always looking for something. So quest is a good thing. But I agree. I like the randomness and the adventure of what Flemming categorizes each meeting with, just sort of an open-ended question that we get to explore, and it's different all the time. I like that as well.
Well, it can go together. I mean, on a quest, sort of different things happen every time anyway. You're not just sort of sitting in the same place talking about the same thing. That's not a good quest.
May I jump in?
Yes, certainly.
A few thoughts. When I hear quest, immediately, the image comes up is all this novel of usually inspired by gaming. And there is this bar, and also it's requesting. There is a board which has a lot of quests, not by the people who are in it, but the other people around. The community puts those requests to the bar or the guild. And this guild would collect these quests and categorize into different classes and the difficulties, and it requires different level of skill set. And the guild gives it controls the protocol. When you first come in, you have to have a test, and then you go through to see if you are serious about what you're going to do, and you register as a adventurer, and then you would classify as, like, say, the bronze guild member. And then you can take up to the silver level quests. and then you would accumulate the points that allows you to get the silver quest. So it doesn't have to be your own quest, but it has to be requested by somebody, and you show it to it. So I see an entity or protocol, which is a platform to facilitate the quest. And then the continuity happens because you actually signed up for it, and you actually accumulating these things. And these quests could be ongoing. So it could be you do random kind of act, random act of kindness to the stranger, and that could be a point. And you bring that point to the guild and the bar, and show it to how you did it, and then the guild, this protocol would give the points to the adventure, and you will be able to be rewarded, and so therefore you become higher rank, and that's become the story. And so that's the first image it comes to in my head when somebody tells me a quest. There is a discussion about the Graham mentioned this oftentimes, and I like it, is this image of physicalness and the playfulness is there. And what I like about is you say for example, if we have physical character, and if you have doll or something, it's a character, it travels around the world because that's a physical form, and we touch it and we introduce it into our life. Say for example, I send this character, physical character, to Ron, and Ron takes this character to his life and introduce it to his quest, and talks about it and capture the moments, and then it will be broadcasted to everybody. We request the things we want to see this character to do it, and so Ron provides the different kind of the images, the reality which we are not familiar with, but through the character we can be part of it. And then you send it to Flemming, and the Flemming would actually do the exact same thing. So we have, through these eyes of this character, we could have a different reality and weaving the different lives. So that's something that came out, especially after looking at Flemming, your video of you're hiking, you're talking about life. That is the images I have in my head. So that's my thought of this process may go.
I love all of that, and I think the way I've never been much of a gamer, but I'm aware of that sort of questing in immersive games like that, and I think it's something that can be transferred, at least as a metaphor, but also some of the approaches of doing it to what we're talking about here. Like, there are different kinds of quests. Somebody might suggest it, somebody might report that they've done it, and anything goes. Whatever you think is meaningful to go out and do can be a quest. Some are long, some are short, but it's interesting to see other people's quests either finished or in process, and you can watch them and share them. I think there's a lot value in that, and they can be all sorts of things, like you mentioned, just having like something physical that travels, for example. I've seen that done several kinds of settings, like somebody has a teddy bear that's the mascot for some event, and then it travels, and and then it shows up in different places, and you have pictures with a teddy bear. Here it is in Tokyo, here it is in Sydney, and so having little artifacts that are part of an adventure that sort of supports weaving together. So I love all of that. We're getting to the top of the hour, so we should get to the wrapping up part, which is how did this go? How did this experiment happen, which was to explore, what to do with a quest or with quests, or what to do with, how does that connect with conversational experiments? I think I got some answers I was looking for. So tell me how it worked for you guys.
I liked it very much. And as I have to fly out immediately, I just wanted to say, give me a little bit more an idea that you see through my eyes how I'm roaming in around in interest or themescapes. So we share common journeys, and not only understanding what the other sees, but where he is. This is what I meant, bridging scales and sectors. Anyway, Flemming, see you soon, and over and bye.
Bye, Heiner. Will has a teddy bear, or what is it?
This is not a teddy bear.
Oh, it's a ferocious.
This is Basil Brush.
Oh, wow, he looks pretty serious.
Yeah, if you're British, you know that Basil Brush was a icon in the 80s. For anyone who's over 30 remembers Basil Brush, and he used to be stuffed, but he was stuffed with polystyrene, which is very unenvironmentally friendly. So I put on a local Facebook group in where I am. Anyone got a pillow? So this is the pillow. I got this off somebody. So my quest is to refill flat basil. And the thing about this guy is, if I take him into a cafe or a restaurant, a pub, everyone cheers up because they all remember this character. So he's like a friend, and I use him to initiate conversations about what is a friend. So he's a character in the game, absolutely.
So here's to the stuffing of basil.
And then someone gave me rhubarb gin today, which is very nice. So, but this is actually a potion, and if I drink this, I will appear in your bathroom in 3 hours, Flemming.
Well, just let's give it a shot. I'll try not to be indecent when you show up.
Hey, I'm getting my drone today, so I'm going to go to the post office right across the street and take possession of my Spark from DJI.
Wow, a Spark.
Major. So when we go traveling, Flemming, we're going to have some coverage.
Well, I have did I show you my drone? I have what's it called? A Phantom 4.
No way. Oh,
yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah, I'm a droner too.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. And you had a 3D printed salamander or something there.
Yes, it's a gecko, a little gecko to remind me of Hawaii.
All righty.
Hawaii.
Cool.
Well, I'll say so long and aloha, and I thank you for hosting us.
Well, thank you for being here. And who else? Jess Winder, we didn't get to talk much with you. Are you still there? Well, another time. Any other concluding remarks from anybody?
Well, I don't know what's going to happen here. I'm quite excited. But I recently asked for being shown a fractal of what a journey is that I'm busy with young people all around the world in 2019, what it's part of. And I'm not sure yet. I'm feeling my fingers into this, but I think I've found the fractal. Thank you. We'll see what evolves here.
Excellent. We'll see what evolves.
Yeah.
Anyway, so thank you all for coming. This was a lovely meeting. Very happy to meet with you, and I think this evolves in interesting directions.
Aloha. Bye.
Aloha. Thank you for being here. Take care.
Bye. Take care.
Next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.